So maybe I'll just, Amy and Suzanne are going to help host us, and I'll help them help host us. And we kind of come up with a little bit of just a template for the hour, but just like we always do in our community, kind of keeping it loose and informal and relaxed. And, Guadalupe will share a story, and Amanda will share a story, and Amanda's going to go first, and they've just invited us to not so much interview, but just reflect and wherever their stories take us, and we can kind of just go from there. And I think the intention also is to leave some time, maybe a third of the time at the end, to see where it goes. And Aju may share, or we may just continue to reflect, and we'll just kind of make up our minds as we go. Does that sound okay? Okay. Suzanne and Amy.
Well, thank you for inviting us to be here with you and host you. I feel, I said this a little bit before, it feels a little bit more like you're hosting, the storytellers are actually the hosts because we get invited into your lives in a really meaningful way. So I'm just excited to be here and hear from you all.
Same. Thank you so much. That I couldn't have said it any more beautifully. Amanda, you're up first, so maybe I'll just invite you to share something that you might want us to hear, and if you feel like it, maybe why you'd want us to hear it.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to see all of you guys. It's always good to see you. And I've been listening in a little bit too. It's been so nice listening to everyone's stories and seeing people across the world. It's really beautiful. So I wrote out my story because I don't want to miss anything and I get nervous, and this is a particularly just meaningful thing for me. I want to talk a little bit about my little brother, and it's particularly special right now because he turned 18 last weekend, and so I haven't gotten to send him a gift yet, and so I've invited him to listen in, and so maybe he's here listening. But I just wanted to share a little bit about when he came into my life and what he's meant to me, and share that with you all, and people who are some of my best friends and who I consider to be family. So so I have it here. So I was an only child for 13 years. And then my mom remarried, and when I was in middle school, Anthony was born. I remember the day and his little face. I remember going into the hospital, maybe greeting my mom who had just given birth, but I don't remember much other than taking Anthony into my arms and holding him for some amount of time. I think they say that when you're in love, time stands still. It could have been hours or it could have been minutes. It felt like I held him for hours and stared into his little face. And I don't think I stopped staring into his little face for months. Maybe just when he was screaming at night, and then I let others manage. We're pretty remarkably different in some ways. He's painfully extroverted, and I was painfully introverted growing up. I remember going on family vacations, and I would feel an overwhelming relief about not having to tend to my social life. And Anthony would literally cry and moan with boredom, wishing he could just find someone to talk to and play with. He has taught me some things. He taught me about slowing down. Playing with a younger person requires you to let go of your plans and just be. He was patient with me, and he was patient with me when I couldn't do that, but he was persistent in trying to teach me the lesson. He tried to teach me how to play tennis, which he's really good at, and I'm really bad. But he told me I was a natural. He's a good sport. It made me feel like he just wanted to spend time with me, and it didn't really matter what we were doing, at least until it was time to play with someone more talented than his uncoordinated sister. I remember when he came to visit me at college for the first time, and I saw his little face again outside my dorm, smiling up at me, and I literally was overwhelmed with happiness to see that little guy. He's grown into such an amazing human who has always been very smart and wise. He has a really good sense of humor. He's kind and curious and adventurous. And one of my favorite parts about him is that he still wants to sit on my lap and snuggle, even though he's about 6'3". I could tell more stories about him and our relationship over the years, but I just wanted to spend some time talking about him and what he's contributed to my life. And I've been thinking a lot about him as he thinks about going off to college at Ithaca. At least he's moving in the right direction. He'll be closer to me than he was in Pennsylvania. I hope he'll find some time to go on a New England adventure with me. So that's my story. So I welcome questions or where it takes everybody. I hope everyone could hear me okay. I was nervous about that.
I'm imagining Anthony listening, and I just wish I could see his face. And I would have said little face, but then when you said 6'3", maybe not. I can tell you when I was listening to you, I was thinking about what he's contributed in terms of helping you slow down, patience and persistence, and thinking, wow, what a preparation for this time that we're in. And it had me curious about that. Is there something about what Anthony's brought to your life that has shown up in these moments that we're in now?
That's such a good question. Yeah, this time has absolutely taught me more about that. I feel like the slowness and the just being has been really present in my life. And for me, that's become easier. And I think he contributed that to me a lot when I was younger and had maybe more trouble slowing down. That question has me wondering what it's been like for him, like, being his age and wanting to be with his friends, and he's graduating from high school and going to college, and I wonder what this is like for him too, slowing down.
Do you have a guess?
I think he's pushing against it. He's taking trips. He's going to he went on a trip to Florida with some of his friends who he's been social distancing with. So I don't know. I think I can't imagine. I think it's probably been a new and difficult experience. Yeah.
Thank you for such wonderful story. The picture that you created in terms of, when you saw him as a baby and stop to the image of him sitting on your lap, snuggling, even though he's much taller than you. Um, what stood out for me is, at the beginning when you said that you had he just had his 18th birthday and that you haven't sent a present, and in a way you invited him to come and listen. And it made me curious as if this was some kind of present for him. What would you hope or wish to get from listening?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think those are all images that I've held forever, like remembering when he was born and when he was little, and how, like, I just remember so much of that time and how sweet it was for me to watch him grow up and all the different stages. And he was just living his life. And um so I guess I hope to give, I guess some of those, offer those memories to him as a way to know, like, what he's given to me, or just it, it's a huge part of my life, that having had him be around, and having our relationship develop over the years as he changes and we both grow up together in different stages of our lives.
Amanda, I was wondering about, you're talking about how you learn slowness and it's getting easier now. And I was just wondering about how these, I don't know if you'd call them slowness skills or slowness ways of being, how that makes a difference for you in your work or in your life now.
Slowness feels really important in my life, especially, well, in work and in relationships in general. I guess just being present with people. I think that like sometimes when things in work get really hard, and I don't know what to do, I think I'm learning, or continuing to learn, like sometimes just not doing anything or just being slow and present is the way to go. And that, yeah, I guess that, that's what I was saying. Like, he was always inviting me to just be with him. And I can remember times when, like, I was just in my own world and, being a teenager myself, and like wasn't I couldn't do that. But it, that's always what he wanted. He just wanted me to be there and play and like enjoy him, and so yeah, it continues to show up and be really important in my life and work.
I mean, I feel like it's taking me a bunch of different places, so I hope it's okay for me to say like a couple things. But one, like, I'm struggling to find words for it, but like whatever, like you telling this story and inviting him to hear it here just feels like an incredibly Amanda thing to do. And I was like, oh, by the time I talk, I want to have a word for it, but it's still not there. And, but it's something about like bringing people along with you or into spaces with you, it being like, even just the fact that you chose to read, so you didn't leave anything out, like you didn't want to miss anything. the care that like that is expressed in that for me is just so moving. And I'm also finding, you know, like meeting your brother through you, one, makes me want to hang out with him, but two, like I find myself grateful. Like I'm learning that he's shaped who you are, and being with you is so awesome that I'm feeling grateful for him and all the ways that he's made you more Amanda, you know? And so that's another thing. And just to honor too, like, so I'm just appreciating you more through this and him. And also it's taking me to, one of the images from your story that sticks out so powerfully to me is this like endless moment that's like still happening probably in some other dimension where you're staring into his face for months, you know? Like it just got me thinking about what a moment is. Like it's not a second or a minute, it's just a piece of time or an experience. And that could be you know, that you don't even know how long that was happening. And to be invited to imagine that and be brought into that was pretty special. And it gets me thinking about my relationship with my younger brother, who was supposed to get married this summer, and they'll do it somehow. But I have been like writing my like best man speech in my head for a long time. And one of the things I was always wanting to say or express in some, or help people know, is like I always just sort of thought of my younger brother as my first experience of love, you know, like, like love with parents is a thing, but there was something different, I think, about my experience of him. And this has me wanting to share that with him. And I think he knows in some ways, but you inviting your brother to hear this makes me more committed to sharing these, you know, these thoughts and experiences with my brother. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
It is very interesting for me to hear, Amanda, you know, the feeling that you had when you learn about this brother, about Anthony being born, you know, having the experience of being by yourself in this family. And it's striking me because I had a very different experience because I'm from a very large family. We are 9 and I'm the 7th of 9 kids. So, but when I learned about my younger brother, Bert, you know, there was a combination of jealousy and this curiosity to, you know, for this baby, for this person to, you know, to be part of the big group that we were already, you know, in. So, but it's beautiful to hear that experience that you had, and you know, that the ways that you two learn from each other and, I don't know, value each other. So like, well, like siblings, right? And it's, despite the difference of age, and I don't know, it's just beautiful to hear. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Guadalupe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as to, you know, as you hear how you know, all of us are being, how will I say, transported in your letter to your brother, story of your brother. What is it bringing up for you? What is it making you feel?
It's so it's sweet to hear your questions and where, you know, what you noticed. I think it has me reflecting more on some of those things, like the slowness and the presence. And I'm thinking about what Greg said about how, you know, he's shaped me and who I am, and I'm also appreciating that. And also curious, Greg, about, you know, your brother and some of those similar feelings that it's bringing up for you in relation to him. Yeah, I don't know. It feels really nice to share with all of you guys, such special people in my life, and I think I'll continue to think about it throughout the day. So that'll be sweet. Thank you guys for listening to my story and asking about it.
Thank you for allowing us to be small part of relationship with your brother. This is an interaction between, I feel, you know, that this is an interaction, a lovely interaction with you and your brother, and we have been brought into it. So thank you.
I certainly echo that. So thank you, Amanda.
Me too. I feel like we could keep talking about, like, at least I'm transported to relationships in my life. And I'm also, as my responsibility as host, are we supposed to be moving to someone else? So I'm in both places. So is it Guadalupe, are you, is there anything else before we shift?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, okay. I'm looking forward to hearing Guadalupe's story.
Great. It's all yours, Guadalupe.
Thank you. So I want to do something before I start sharing my story that I just beautifully heard about the Maori way to introduce yourself. That has, imagine in my head lots of possibilities and lots of invitations for people that are not here physically, but that I want to invite anyway. So most of you know, but I want to tell to everybody else, I'm Mexican. So I am from a city called Mexicali, that is in the Mexican state of Baja California, and very close to the California state in the United States. And it's in the Sonora Desert. And as a desert, we have saguaros. So that's my tree, the saguaro tree. And we have mountains. And there are three main mountains close to Mexicali. One is called Dark Hill. The other one is called the Sentinel. And the other one is called, in Spanish, La Rumorosa. And I checked the translation, and it's a funny translation for English. It's called the Noisy. So that's the one that is my mountain, the noisy one. Mexicali is it's part of the Sonoran Desert. And before, when there's still indigenous people living in there, but there are many, and there are even less than before. So the main names in there are Kukapa, Kiliwa, Pai Pai, Kumia, Koshimi. And so one of the groups is called Kukapa, and that means those who arrive. And I particularly like that, that group in terms because the meaning of their name and kind of help me to inspire my, you know, the organization of the story that I want to tell you about. So anyway, so I want to start, like Amanda say, I also wrote some part of the stories because I do it because I have the tendency to go many places, and I'm okay with that. I see a lot of the stories like a hopscotch, you know, different organizations, different ways of presentation. I love poetry, I love stories. So, but I wanted to organize it in a way that invite all to questions and to reflections. Anyway, so before I read my quote, I also want to mention that one specific invitation that I have for that story is I'm not sure if it's the right word to call it invitation, but I guess I want to mention that I'm holding very dear to my heart my ancestors, and I'm also thinking about, you know, indigenous people in the Americas right now that are particularly struggling in trying to survive under COVID-19. You know, I'm thinking of the indigenous people in the Amazonas, the indigenous people in Ecuador, indigenous people, the Navajo in the United States. So I want all of you to think about them in any way that you can, you know. So those are people that are present now, but also they are my ancestors. And I want to share a story about my father. His name was Sebastian. Okay, so I'm gonna read a quote of a book that I love very much. The book is called Pedro Páramo, and it was written by Juan Rulfo. It's a very famous and one of the best writers, Mexican writers of all times. So anyway, I'm gonna on. It's my translation, of course. The day you left, I understood I was not going to see you ever. You were dressed in red because the afternoon sun rays and because the bleeding twilight of the sky falling on you. You smiled. You were leaving a town that many times you told me about. I love it because of you, but I hate it for everything else, even for having born there. Um, I grew up with parents that were very natural storytellers. My warm memories of growing up were specifically about my father, you know, having conversations with my mother and remembering people of their town, original town in Jalisco, Mexico, a very small rural town where they have to live to look for a better future for themselves and for, their children. That's why they moved north from Mexico, from the central Mexico in Jalisco. So they will, one of the, um, my father had unbelievable skills to tell stories, funny stories, stories of specific details about people and the relationships that he had with his siblings and his neighbors in the town where he grew up. The name of the town is called Mistlan, in a land of clouds. That's what it means, the name of the town. But one, there are a few things that stand up for me in terms of, this storytelling process for my father and for me witnessing this. Like I said before, I am part of 9 kids. I'm the 7th of 9 kids. And when we were growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. So everything had to be distributed between all of us, We share clothes that the kids that were older than me pass it around, and things like that. But in terms of the storytelling process or daily activities, I remember that a time when my father used to start talking about people and stories from Mistlan is when we were sitting down in the table. And I remember the table wasn't big enough for all of us, 11 of us, And so he was, he told my mom, we gotta get a bigger table, nobody fits in here, and because we will be on top of each other and we will be like making a lot of noise and also sometimes fighting. Of course, that's what siblings do. And it was a hard thing to find a table to feed 11 kids. And they both tried to find it. And I remember he ended up finding a carpenter to make a table for 11 kids, And they have to manage, to build it in the house because it wasn't gonna be getting through the door. So, but my father came out with that idea, it was like, and again, we didn't have a lot of money, like he didn't have the luxury to go in, but it was important for him and he did it. So, we still have the table, my father passed away around 17 years ago. My mother passed away, it's gonna be 5 years next year, I believe. But that stands up for me, like the importance of, of being together for him. I remember seeing his face when every Christmas, because that table became a feast. That table was full of food, lots of candies, dessert, and all kind of foods. And my father face will light up, because that was his family, that was his kids. And so that table has a special value for me every time I go and remember those stories. There is another part of the, I guess, the capacity of my father to tell stories that, sorry, these tears are of joy, memories and joy. But we had a tree, an eucalyptus tree. They're not very common, but they are in the desert. And we have an eucalyptus tree very close to the street. And he made it his office. That's what he called it. And, all the barrio on the street knew that they call my father Don Sebas. Don, it means like a mister, out of respect. And so, but he will sit there under the tree in his office. And everybody that walk around, say hello and, spend some time with him, and he will know the stories. They will hear the stories that he will tell them, and he will hear the stories that, that they were willing to tell him. My father had a real connection with dogs, which that's another part of, he will pick up dogs from the street that they have, nobody owned them. And he will use or call them, these very different and funny names. For example, one of the ones that I remember the most is that there was this dog that came, just show up, and so he called him. Is called in Spanish. It's called Solo Vino, and that means he came along. And that was the name of the dog. It was like, and there was another one, because we always have like at least 5 dogs in the house. And I remember another one that he called the dog without shoes, or shoeless, that's the word. In Spanish is descalzo or descalza. But my father will create these, amazing, I don't know, poetic images about, things and his relationship with not only with people, but I'm talking about pets. And even with the tree, I have a very special connection with trees because of my father. And another memory of the dogs is that, he had a pickup truck, and he had a dog, a Labrador dog. At that time, the dog was old, the dog was sick, but he would take the dog everywhere. He would just put him in the pickup truck and just drive around for different things. My father was retired for, I don't remember the last years, but he was retired once that I came here. But this dog, sometimes he will leave him there because he was going into an office or something, do something, and he wasn't going to leave him outside. So the dog will cry like a baby. You know, if my father left him, and everybody will hear his cries, and it was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Because he was suffering, honestly, and he was my father's dog. I mean, it's like abandoning him. So yeah, I don't know. Those stories in the memories that I have of him, um, have been very helpful right now. In a way, I'm glad that he's not here. I will be very worried for him, for his health, and you know, he will be around 90 right now if he were alive. Um, um, but I'm so grateful of the memories that he left me. You know, and some of those, my son, who is 25, he got to meet him, and um, some of those he also shared. You know, he also learned. I don't know. That's my story today. I'd be happy to hear questions and yeah, reflections.
Guadalupe, the image of your dad building a table inside the house so that it was big enough for everyone really stays with me, to think about, you know, just the care that everybody has a seat at the table, and that a house or the size of a doorway is not going to stop him from figuring out how to make that happen. So it really, it's moving in this time where we're not sitting at tables together. Mm. And just has me just thinking about, you know, how that's contributing maybe to how you're getting through this time. Like if you're, I don't have the question fully formed, but I'm just imagining, you know, having this father's presence in your life, and how that's contributed to or prepared you for now. I don't know.
Wow. That's a very, very nice question. You know, I think a lot about hardworking people that I have the chance to meet, you know, those essential workers that we keep talking about, but not the doctors or the nurses, but the people that goes to the working grocery stores, the working farms, and even the people that are, you know, working with meat. And I remember my father, you know, and I remember the dilemmas that he had to face. You know, it is my family or it is my health. And infuriates me that no much of the injustices have changed. And but it helps me to appreciate so much the the individual value that these workers put into it, into the families, that they try to support. So I have a lot of respect for them and for what they do, and it helps me to, in a way that I can, to give a voice, in places, any opportunity that I have, I can ask questions about what about these workers, what about, they're deciding between, getting infected or having their kids something to eat, just like we were just talking in the before hour with our brothers and sisters from Africa, the it's different, the poverty that we live in the United States, but the dilemmas that people have are very similar, you know. There is people without documents to be here that are carrying, the weight of this pandemic right now. And they are making sure that we have food in our table, And I don't know, I try to honor them and to listen to them, and yeah, because my father was one of those workers.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing. So there's so many connections of your dad. I appreciated so many things about your story, how you started. One of the things that moved me and connects me to the other stories that I've heard. One time I started, I believe I watched a little bit of the first hour, which is where I believe it was New Zealand, or it could have been Australia, where they were locating for that as introduction. It was powerful for me to watch that. The way to introduce stuff was to locate mountain, the body of sea, and all that. And the first hour of the African groups, they did not talk about it, but they showed a mountain, a picture of a mountain, and showed the body of water. And so I was connected to you telling us that your mountain is Noisy Mountain, and talked about the group Kokapa. I know I'm butchering it. Those who arrive, there's something about it, I can't put it in words, that moved me. Then the idea of you telling us to hold in our hearts the indigenous people of United States, the different countries, Mexico, Ecuador, and all that. So just the bringing of all these amazing connections in a different way also showed, I don't know what it's also connected to how your dad, connects to not just people, but to different things, dogs and trees and all that. So that's where it transported me, in so many, like you said, hopscotch. It got me to different ways. I'm curious about the table, because it was built in the house. So how are you guys still have the table? Is the table still? Do you still have the house? I know it's detailed, but that's how much these stories. Your story just moved me. It connected me to my own father. It connects me to so many things that you are caring about. So I thank you. I don't want to take too much space.
I just wanted to offer just a quick reflection. It was so beautiful, Guadalupe, to hear about your connection with your father and these stories about the table. And I just thought it was so beautiful how, like, I have the word togetherness circled like all over my page, like just how you wove that in from the very beginning, and bringing in your ancestors and honoring the mountains and indigenous people all over the world. And I just think when I think of you, I think of how you do that all the time, bringing people in and together and wanting to be with, and just how you honor that in your father. And even the dog who came along, like, it was just so sweet. And really makes me want to hear more stories from around the table. Like, I wanted to ask you, what was one of your favorite memories or stories? And I'm sure there are many, and I hope to get to hear one or two. Thank you.
I was also really moved by the story of the table being built inside the home, and like not letting the confines of a doorway be in the way of creating a space for everyone. And it got me thinking about the stories that table might tell if we had a chance to interview the table about some of the things that the table learned about your dad and about everyone sitting around that table, their special memories. And yeah, the fact that that table still exists. Yeah, it just makes me wonder what it means to you that that table still lives on. Like a legacy or something.
Yeah.
I love the idea of like all those stories being inscribed into the table in some way, like living, like literally living in the table. And not uncommon experience for me to be frustrated by the constraints of time. So I'm like gonna try to condense everything so much into one sentiment, I guess, for you, Guadalupe, is that to me, you like, and maybe I'm learning that this is connected with your father, that you just radiate dignity. Like I feel like every part of that story, not just the people, like the tree has dignity. Like I imagine like every nickname that your father bestowed on every dog was a dignifying act.
Yes.
And you not missing a chance to help us remember all, like, that every single working person has just as much dignity as anybody else and faces incredible dilemmas, and that having them all alongside us listening, I just isn't, it contributes to this experience I have of just being with you, where I'm just like, this is the world I want to be a part of. I'm so incredibly grateful for you just radiating this dignifying something. I don't know if I have a word for it, but like next to that's just gratitude. So thank you.
Thank you, you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Who's closing?
Do you want to say any words or no about where the reflections took you? It's okay if you don't, of course. But.
I don't know. I guess those memories sustain me. Those stories sustain me, And I imagine they will sustain me, because I am made of stories, you know, and especially stories of survival. You know, my father shared those. You know, it's good to remember those stories. We can go through this. We are going to get through this.
Before we sign off, I just wanted, somebody made a comment, and I just wanted to bring it as to share with Guadalupe and going forward. They were curious about whether you, Guadalupe, would also consider yourself as someone that builds tables for others.
Say that again, sorry.
Would you consider yourself as someone that builds tables for others, the way your father built a table for his?
Yes, I hope so.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, NTI, and all of you guys who are contributing this hour. We really are so lucky to have gotten to hear your memories of your families and your relationships and everything that you hold dear. So thank you so much for everything that you've shared here today.